Hello, I'm Robert Scoble, and you're watching Work Fast TV, which is about how the internet is changing work. This show is supported through the generous support of SAP. SAP provides software that helps both large and small businesses manage their business, lower their costs, and bring more services to their business relationship partners. Thank you to SAP for supporting the show and supporting social media. My guest today is Buzz Bruggeman, co-founder of ActiveWords and one of the world's best networkers with more than 10,000 contacts in Outlook. You thought you didn't have enough friends, right? But that's not why I'm excited to have him on the show. He's one of the world's top users of mind mapping software and as always has some new tool to show me, and that's what we're here for. Welcome to the show, Buzz.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
Really well. So I remember seeing you at Gnomedex one year, and you were showing off this wild presentation that wasn't in PowerPoint, and it was a mind map. So tell me what mind mapping is.
Well, you know, it's a funny story about mind mapping. David Allen and I are good friends, and you know you had David here last week. And the first time I ever went to one of David Allen's seminars, I was sitting in about the third row, and David runs these seminars in a very interactive fashion. And I'd heard of Mind Manager, MindJet, mind mapping, and I really hadn't given a lot of thought to what it did. So David asked a rhetorical question of a guy, and about somebody in the back row said, the question was about a subscription-based business. And he gave David an idea. Yeah. And in a nanosecond, David had a mind map up. And he added the idea to the mind map. And everybody in the room thought, oh, gee, this is cool. And I realized what had happened is David had taken that idea and instantly captured it in a mind map. Yeah. So that he could go back at a later point in time and look at that mind map and realize and put it in perspective. So, for example, what I've done is I've created mind maps for our marketing. So what I'm going to show you in a second here is the mind map that I've just created yesterday for marketing in San Francisco. Okay. So what I do is I take ActiveWords and I type in...
So we're seeing the screen
right now? Yeah, we're going to look at my screen.
Okay.
So I type in MM for mind map, SFO, and the next thing I see is my mind map for San Francisco.
Yeah.
So on that mind map, I have all the things, you, other press people, people I want to talk to, companies we're trying to do business with, and different ideas, and I have those instantly in front of me.
Yeah, and the mind map lets you think more creatively rather than very hierarchically, right? PowerPoint forces you into point, subpoint, you know, where a lot of life is not that way. You want to think about, you know, groupings or relationships, and you need to spread out into a non-hierarchical thing. Right?
Well, you know, I thought about it. You know, when you go to church and you're singing a hymn, everybody gets a hymnal, and you open the hymnal up, and you're looking at the hymnal, and you're looking at the words. Yeah. And the reason why they do that is they want to keep everybody on the same page. Right. So with a mind map, what you're basically doing is you're keeping both your ideas, your focus, and anybody who's looking at the mind map on the same page. Yeah. And what I learned along the way, for example, I have another map that I've created called Mind Map Guerrilla Marketing. And this is a talk I gave recently at the Seattle Tech Startups, and it's a map that says, what do you do when the money runs out? Yeah. So whenever I have an idea about how to market better and how to explain to little companies how to better market their products, you know, I take that idea, I drop it in this mind map. So what happens is, as I'm making this presentation, I keep everybody glued on that mind map. Yeah. And I don't lose them.
Now, is there an internet mind map?
Yeah,
I know there's both Mind Manager. Tell me a little bit about the software that's out there to keep a mind map.
Yeah, there is an internet version of mind mapping from MindJet, and there's another product that isn't nearly as robust, and I don't remember what that's called. It's a German company. They were at Office 2.0 last year. But at any rate, having said that, there still are people out there, you know, let me digress. When I show mind mapping off in a talk, everybody pays attention. Yeah. When I run a speech or a presentation with PowerPoint, I can look out at my audience and I can see their eyes kind of flick back into their heads, and everybody says, oh no, not another PowerPoint deck. Yeah. But anyway, having said that, if I go back to
it's different. Just by having something different, it causes people to pay attention. But I love how you use it. You traverse through these arms, and so as you hit different things, different arms and different branches show up. And it's very visual and very different than a standard PowerPoint with, you know, 8 flying in bullets or something like that.
And what typically happens in a situation like that is when I'm giving that talk, like the guerrilla marketing talk, you know, somebody will interrupt me. and they'll say, hey Buzz, have you thought about X? And I'll go, no, I hadn't thought about that. And bang, I can add it to that map on the fly, and it's done.
Yeah.
But having said that, somebody says, okay, we've looked at your mind map, we've looked how you work, we've looked at how ActiveWords launches this. It has to be a PowerPoint. Yeah. My company has a PowerPoint standard. So going back to my guerrilla marketing talk, if I click on the guerrilla marketing talk,
and we're seeing this on the screen,
I can click on this guy and I can send it to PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I can send it to PowerPoint, send it to Word, and in no time flat, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with a PowerPoint of that. I'm going to end up with a PowerPoint deck of that map.
Yeah.
All I got to do now is kind of pretty it up, and it's done. It's a done deal, and there's the PowerPoint all done, ready to go. So what I've done, and it really goes along with my theory about productivity. And I've really been thinking a lot about productivity. And as you know, I used to practice law.
Yes.
And one of the things about practicing law is that lawyers meter their time. You know, I used to bill my time in 6-minute increments.
Yeah.
So you'd call me up and we'd talk for a minute or two, and I'd bill you for 6 minutes. If we talked for 4 minutes, I'd bill you for 12 minutes.
See, the client never really figures that out, right?
Yeah.
I better have 6 minutes worth of stuff to talk about, and then I hang up on you.
Yeah, and it's so funny because what happens is when you're in the lawyering business, you're metering out information.
Yes.
When you're in the technology business, you're trying to accelerate information. Yeah. You're trying to respond, you're trying to support your customers, you're trying to evangelize, you're trying to pitch. So time is incredibly important to the entrepreneur, to the guy that's building a product. Yeah. For the lawyer, time is important in that they're selling it.
Yes.
And I've been totally fascinated in what I call the ActiveWords Odyssey. How many lawyers we have that use ActiveWords that are either personal injury lawyers or lawyers that bill by the deal.
Now you've been mentioning ActiveWords. We should tell people what that is.
Well, ActiveWords is the product that we've built. We've got people using it all over the world. And what it allows you to do is communicate with your computer using your own language, be it typed, clicked on, inked with a stylus, and one of these days spoken. And we even have people who've hooked up ActiveWords to the voice engine in Vista. But for example, I can be in the middle of this PowerPoint deck and I can type NYT, and the next thing I'm going to see is the New York Times online.
Yeah, you don't have to go to your web browser and type NewYorkTimes.com or find it in a bookmark anywhere. You just remember, oh, NYT.
Right. Yeah, and what people, as David Allen was talking the other day about Pareto's Law, he was talking about the 80-20 paradigm.
Yeah.
And the 80-20 paradigm says 80% of the time you're doing the same stuff over and over and over. But as I've thought about productivity, and I've thought about working fast, and I've thought about working smart, what I believe is happening today in the technology market and the internet space and these products that people are building, nobody's building it all. Yeah. Nobody is building things that do it all. So if I come to you and I say, Robert, I want to talk to you about a new equation. Yeah. And you say, okay, what's the new equation? And I say 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah. And you say, that's not a new equation. That doesn't do anything for me. But if I come to you and I say, you know what, Robert, 1 + 1 + 1 = 9. And you say, how does 1 + 1 + 1 = 9? Well, and it's real simple. You know, we have these huge numbers of people who are living in Outlook.
Yes.
And you know, I was thinking as I was going to demonstrate today how I'm living in Outlook, I was going to show you a product that I know you've interviewed Tony Wright from Rescue Time.
Yeah.
And so what Tony has done is he's built this product that basically attempts to look at your time.
Yes.
So when we can look at my screen...
So I make fun of this on my blog, so you know how much time you're wasting on Twitter.
Absolutely, a ton of time. and Tony told me the other day you can block out, the people can block out the porn sites. They don't have to, you don't have to register the porn sites that they may be looking at. But anyway, so here's Rescue Time.
Is Twitter a porn site?
Well, you know, David Allen talked a lot about productivity porn.
Yeah.
You know, the cute little devices you can get and the things you can do and stuff like this. But anyway, so if you look at my computer screen and you're looking at Rescue Time, you know, and I haven't done anything with Rescue Time other than to let it watch what in the world that I'm doing with my computer.
Yeah.
So now if you go to Rescue Time now on my screen, you will see this huge amount of time that I'm spending in Outlook.
Yeah.
You know, I'm living in Outlook. So, Eureka, I realize that I'm living in Outlook, I'm using Outlook, I'm doing all these things in Outlook. So then the question becomes, what tools can I use in Outlook that are going to get to that 1 + 1 + 1 equation?
Yes.
Okay, to get to the 9. So what I've learned is that there's a handful of products out there that I think revolutionize Outlook.
Yeah.
And the first one is one that I didn't know anything about until I was meeting one day with Tim O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And he said, have you tried Sogni?
Yes.
And I said...
Which is inbox spelled backwards. Right?
Inbox spelled backwards. And I said, you know, tell me about Sogni. And Tim Riley, who is this hardcore Mac user, hardcore, you know, open source guy, said it's one of the few applications that I've ever seen that would get me back to the Windows platform.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, so what's Sogni? So on the right side of my screen, you can see Sogni. And Sogni says now, I'm going to run across your inbox.
Yes.
And I'm going to create, in effect, business analytics for your inbox. So I focused on an email from a woman in Seattle who's setting up a meeting for me. Her name is Malou Day. You can tell that she's not very important in Sogni. She's a 1,600 person. But now, if I just want to look at the emails that I've sent to and from her, you know, they're all there in context. And not only are they there in context, but I can ask for a phone number. I can do all kinds of things inside Sogni, inside Outlook that doesn't, I don't have, there's no heavy lifting.
Yeah.
It's all
you don't have to scroll through thousands of emails.
Right.
I mean, I have inboxes that have 6,000 emails in them now, and you just try to look for some interesting information about somebody, and it's
well, if
even just finding a phone number is really...
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that information-based workers are taking and accelerating information and living in tools like Outlook.
Yeah.
Then to not use those tools that make Outlook just extraordinary, you know, is fascinating to me. I mean, I know there was a rumor a while back that Microsoft was going to buy Sogni.
Yeah.
You know, if I'd been Microsoft, I'd buy Sogni in a heartbeat. You know, I would buy Sogni, and I'd also buy a product called Anagram. So what I want to do now is show you how Anagram works.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you an example of an email that...
So this is a separate product, Anagram.
Totally separate product.
Yeah.
But think about the pain that comes from getting an email, having a signature in it, and thinking about what you have to do to get that email signature and all that information back inside.
Yeah, a lot of copy and paste, you know, copy the name, go
Copy
over to
and paste,
contacts.
type, you know, on and on. And you're thinking about, as you're doing this, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
You know, your life is ebbing away. So with Anagram, I've simply highlighted this email signature. I hit F6, which I've told Anagram that whenever I type F6, and what's going to happen next is all that data is going to be intelligently parsed and dropped inside of Outlook.
Yeah. It's really killer.
It's
for,
done.
You know, for getting information out of signatures. It works with some web pages too, right?
Right, works with web pages.
Or if you go to a restaurant and there's an address there,
right.
You just highlight the address and you hit F6 and
exactly.
it puts it right into...
you know, or if I get an email from you that says, hey, let's have coffee on Tuesday at 1. Or let's have, you know, lunch on Tuesday at 1. I can highlight that in that email. The next thing I'll see it is inside my calendar.
Yeah.
So when I look at how you aggregate these tools, and I look at, okay, I'm living in Outlook, I've just used Anagram to grab it. I've dropped it into my calendar. I've synced it up on my iPhone with Exchange. And now all of a sudden, it's back to the hymnal. Everything's on the same page.
Yeah.
I can make intelligent, proactive decisions about how to get things done.
Yeah.
You know, David Allen talks about how you have to have reliable collection systems to get things in place.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, his mantra is basically he's lazy. He said, I'm lazy. I mean, he's one of the hardest working guys that I know.
Absolutely.
And when you look around the rooms for his seminars, you see all these incredibly hardworking people who are trying to get more things done.
Yeah.
And so we've given them tools, but we just haven't provided them with either the training or the thinking metaphor that says, take this, you know, add this, and all of a sudden, man, the world changes, life changes.
Now, you're one of the best networkers I've ever seen, right? We met at a demo conference or whatever, and I watched as you walked around Pop Tech and demo, and everybody knew you. What do you do with those business cards that you grab?
Well, what I do with those business cards is I take them, or the contact information, I drop them in Outlook, and I always add something about the person. Where I met him, where he went to school, what kind of interest, you know, things like that. So we've gone over to using ActiveWords as a front end, a semantic front end for Windows Desktop Search. So I can type in search for a contact, and I can type in your wife's name is Miriam, okay?
Yeah.
So in less than a second, I've got Miriam's name up.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a lot of time. You know, everybody else has to think about all the pain that's involved in doing all these things to look all this stuff up. And I think they give up.
Yeah.
You know, and I think David Allen once upon a time said that in the course of a day, we may deal with 300 or 400 different data points rushing at us.
Yes.
And it's like drinking from a fire hose, and we don't have systems in place that allow us to deal with those things. And there's another really interesting company in Seattle that I can't get to talk about today because they're in stealth mode. But what they're doing is they're building sort of this human relationship contact dashboard. So that you can.
Isn't that like Facebook?
No, it's not like Facebook, but it's so funny. I remember when I was talking to Om Malik at one point in time, and he said, you know, Microsoft should buy Facebook.
Yeah.
It's the Rolodex of the future.
Well, they bought a sliver of them.
Yeah, but the problem that I see with Facebook is that it reminds me a little bit of a Roach Motel.
Yes.
You know, information goes in, and nothing comes out. You know, you can't get stuff out of it.
They're changing that with the new Connect system that they announced this week. I was at the announcements. The thing that bugs me about Facebook is I can't rely on it as a business utility. They love saying that they're a utility, but they can kick you off at any point.
Yeah.
Outlook never can kick you off, no matter what you do in there. And you have how many business cards or how many contacts?
13,000, I think.
13,000? Well, they limit you to 5,000 people, right? So it's useless for a really good business networker who wants to keep all of their business contacts in there.
Well, I mean, for example, I was hoping today that I was going to be able to come on and announce some really big news for ActiveWords.
Yeah.
You know, but the big news got pushed off for a couple weeks, and you know, hopefully you'll either announce it at some point in time or give you an opportunity to come back for a little footnote session.
Well, what other toys do you have? Because you have a lot of things that you wanted to show me today that
well, you know, it's funny.
I'm
I'm fascinated by the fact that it took exactly 1 week for these guys to hack the iPhone so that I could run it on T-Mobile.
Yeah.
So now I've got all these tools running on my iPhone, hacked on T-Mobile, and it's working.
What kinds of apps do you use on your iPhone?
You know, I've been using all the free ones.
Yeah.
You know,
you have Jot?
Yeah, I have Jot, but you know, the interesting thing about Jot.
And Evernote. I love Evernote.
Yeah, and I haven't got that working. I've become a huge fan of Callwave. And you've used Callwave in the past. And I know when talking to both Guy Kawasaki and Chris Shipley, they are huge fans of Spinbox. So what Callwave does for me is that, you know, I'm like you. I've got my phone number out there on the internet.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to talk to me can call my phone number.
Yeah.
You know, with ActiveWords, we try to exceed everybody's expectations in terms of our software.
Yeah.
You know, I routinely send emails off to people who download our software or people who buy our software and say, hey, you know, would you like to talk about what we're doing?
Yeah.
Because every time I have one of those conversations, I learn from these people.
Yeah.
So what Callwave does is if I get a call, if we're sitting here and the call comes in, you know, it's going right to my email.
Yeah.
And it comes
not to your voicemail, it goes into your email system.
It comes to voicemail, then it cascades into email, and so I can sit there and I can see what happened.
Everybody at Microsoft's going, we have that already.
Well, you know,
but normal people who don't have a huge IT infrastructure and don't have a really cool call system can use this stuff. I love Callwave for that reason because it would show up. It sends it over to India and they turn the voicemail into text that I can read in my email and I can see, oh, I need to get back to that guy right now, or this is a PR pitch, I can get back to him on Monday.
Yeah, and what you're basically doing, again, is you're aggregating innovative ideas. Yeah. You know, you're taking that voicemail, you're turning it into text, you've got something to archive to listen to, you can proactively manage it, and all of a sudden, you know, go forward. But there's another really cool little company in Seattle called iJot. And with iJot, let me show you an iJot here. iJot is video email.
Okay.
And with the video email, what you've done now is you escalated the game and you've really made it into a personal experience.
Okay.
So if we can go to my computer screen, here's an iJot that I sent to myself the other day.
Yeah.
And the iJot is, a few minutes, 45 seconds long. But what the iJot guys now have done is they've allowed you to add a document to it.
Yeah.
So with the iJot that's been allowed to add a document to it, I can say to a VC, I can say, you know, here's the business plan for building ActiveWords on the BlackBerry. And it's, you know, I really want you to look at pages 3, 5, and 7, or these particular paragraphs and things like this. So all of a sudden the VC who's getting my business plan collected with this video email says, oh, you know, that's what Buzz looks like. he took enough time to think about communicating with me in a very personal fashion.
Yes.
And it becomes a very important business tool. So again, what have we done? We've taken a document that we've created. We've taken an email that we would otherwise send, and we've so customized it and personalized it so that it becomes a powerful experience.
Yeah.
So those are, those are the things that I'm thinking about.
And it works with any email system.
It works with any email system, and I think it works on the iPhone too.
Yeah.
So again, these tools are out there.
Yeah.
It's not whether they're out there, but I'm fascinated that we have this sort of mantra in this country that we hire smart people. We give them the tools, we sort of engage them, we try to motivate them, we try to lead them, but when in fact we don't ever say to them, if you take this piece and this piece and this piece, you end up with the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
And then the puzzle works.
Yeah, so few people know about all this stuff. I mean, I watch people in the airports working, and they're still using Outlook 2000, and they very rarely try some of these newer tools or even know about them.
Right. Well, but I mean, again,
that's why we're doing this show, is try to get more people into this new productivity world.
I mean, somebody told me, a guy at Microsoft told me one day that a huge number of people don't realize that you can right-click in certain applications and do a bunch of things. That just hasn't been communicated. And I think that one of the problems that little companies like ours face is an idea of what I would call hand-to-hand combat. And the hand-to-hand combat means that you got to get with somebody, you got to get them to focus on what you're doing, and you got to say, this is why it's important. So when I look at these video tools that are being used, like your Kite TV.
Yeah,
the ability
we got a little camera over here in the corner.
With your Kite TV, the ability that on the spot, video something, personalize it, get the information out there, archive it. And so when somebody goes back and they say, okay, now, what did he really say?
Yeah.
And what was the communication? How did he do this? Okay, now I get it. You think about, and I was always fascinated when Audible came out with books on, books for the iPod and books for MP3 players. I always thought that Audible made a mistake in not dealing with that as learning on demand.
Yeah.
We've been so oriented towards going to a classroom, getting there at 9:10, the prof comes out, we got 50 minutes worth of teaching. When what people really want to learn is learning on demand.
Explain.
They want to learn when they want to learn.
Yeah.
They want to learn when they want to learn.
A lot of the best universities now are filming the lectures, so if you miss a lecture, you can then watch it at home or whatnot.
Yeah, and I've always understood the sort of professorial concern that if all those lectures are taped, then they don't need the professor anymore. He sort of loses control of that intellectual property. When in fact, I've noticed that the really proactive guys have said, you know what, get my content out there, bring these kids into my class, and let's make that classroom experience a really rich experience.
Anything else? Because you have a whole list of stuff. I know we've talked for hours, and you can keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, in this productivity suite that I use, the rescue time, the stealth project, the anagram, the voice, all these things. I mean, they are so rich and so powerful. And with ActiveWords, what I'd like to think is that we're the glue. We're the piece that lets you pull it all together.
Yeah.
Particularly with our scripting language. We can script anything you can do with the keyboard. With our tablet version, you can ink on the screen, and all of a sudden, tablets become useful. One of the things, this morning when we were getting coffee, we ran into this woman who had this Asus EEE device.
Yeah.
This whole product segment of netbooks. I mean, I know there's, Apple would have everybody in the world believe that they could run their business from an iPhone.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the richness of using a device, I mean, that I've been using this Lenovo X300 notebook. I mean, it is the best notebook I've ever owned.
Yeah.
I mean,
very lightweight, very thin.
Very lightweight, very thin. Same basic form factor as the MacBook Air, but much more powerful. I mean, it's got a DVD drive in it. It's got a well, I guess MacBook Air's got a camera in it too. I mean, this is a powerful device. So when you walk into
ports.
a lot more ports, a replaceable battery.
And talk to Mike Arrington. He really hates his MacBook Air right now. He can't even get the Wi-Fi to work on it. Well, and Apple's not even helping him out. It's funny.
But
proves that being an A-list blogger is not what it's cracked up to be.
If you sometimes think about productivity like people playing golf.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to the golf course with a single club in their bag.
Right.
Okay?
They have different clubs.
They have different clubs.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine told me that, you know, to be a great golfer, you only need to learn how to use half a dozen of those.
Yeah.
You don't have to play with every single club, but you do have to know how to use the clubs well and play together, and sort of self-orchestrate this. Yeah. And so
one thing I liked about ActiveWords, by the way, was when I worked at NEC and I was doing customer support, I set up all sorts of scripts to, because I kept getting the same kind of email, like, well, where do I find this, you know, or what's the part number of this, and I would script those kinds of answers to just a couple of keystrokes, and it would fill in the whole email and save me a ton of time.
I mean, let me give you an example of how that works. So I'm going to create a new email message.
So we're seeing your screen again?
Yeah, I'm going to create a new email message, and we'll send it out to Robert Scoble at Fast Company, okay?
Yeah.
So there's Robert Scoble at Fast Company, and I'll say ActiveWords. And I'll say, you know what, I just saw that you downloaded a copy of our software.
Yeah.
And now, if you look at my screen, I typed the word just, and it put in this personalized email.
Yeah.
And I get responses.
And you didn't have to type all that. You didn't have to put the signature or the email.
And I get email responses back from people who say, I've never heard from a software company before. Are you guys for real?
Yeah.
And I'll say, sure. We're for real. Tell us how we can make our product better. Because when you build, and it's funny because I've thought a lot about the people you've had on the show so far.
Yeah.
And I don't remember you've had anybody that immediately comes to mind who's actually built a product, evangelized a product, been out there beating on their customers.
The guy runs runs Park for
Xerox Park. But I bet you the guy from Xerox Park, it's been a long time since he's gone to an insurance agency in Los Gatos and sat down with the people and said, what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's something that I try to do all the time. And in this interesting world that we live in right now, it's very hard to advertise a software product.
Yeah.
You know, you have to depend upon word of mouth.
Yes, that's true.
And so if
that's true whether you're Facebook or a small company, right?
Sure, but I mean, when you build this momentum, and you know, the last time I looked on Google, we had, I don't know, 60, 70,000, 80,000 mentions of ActiveWords.
Yeah.
I mean, for a little tiny company that was built in Winter Park, Florida, to have that kind of visibility over time is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, and we've never had a bad review. You know, I got this funny call from a guy named Bernie Goldbach one day, and Bernie's a tech journalist in Ireland.
He just Twittered me last night.
So. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So anyway, so Bernie writes me back, calls me up and says, "Who are you guys?" And I said, "What do you mean, who are we?" And he said, "Well, you're everywhere."
Yeah.
And I said, "We are?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "People only say good things about you." And I said, "Well, wow, that's interesting." And he said, "Try this." He said, "Go to the A9 search engine.
Yeah.
Put in the word ActiveWords, the plus sign, and the word problem."
Yeah. Or go to Google or Yahoo or.
I mean, Google and Yahoo do that. And he said, "What you're going to see is all this stuff that says my problem is that I haven't been using ActiveWords long enough. You know, the problem is other people don't support their products like ActiveWords does."
Yeah.
So, you know, you feel good about that, but you know, you got.
That's actually a great tip for when you want to go look for a hotel or a restaurant. You put in a negative word with the name of the hotel and see it. You know, who is turn it down. Man, it's really
sensational.
killer.
Thank you very much.
This is crazy stuff, and I told you half an hour would go so fast.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, we're going to have an after-show party and, on the computer, and we're going to take some more questions and get a look at some of the other things you're using, because you use a lot of weird stuff.
It's the only way I know to get things done.
Make your life more productive.
Thanks so much.
Anyways, we have about a minute left, so next week's guest is really going to be pretty crazy. It's David Kralik, who's the internet strategist for Newt Gingrich, and I met him yesterday, and he was showing me all sorts of. He's like you, Buzz. He's showing me all sorts of tools, but in the political world. So he's showing me. Did you know that there's not a database anywhere of all elected officials in America? And he's making one. So that gives you an idea of the kind of person that he is. And Newt Gingrich, love him or hate him as a politician, but he's really doing the best government work out there. When I went to DC, I kept hearing about the efforts that he was making, so I'm really happy to have him on the show next week. Please join us in the after-show party at kite.tv. It's kyte.tv/Scobalizer. And we'll be over answering questions for the next half an hour or so. And then if you're in San Francisco, join us on a photo walk at the Ferry Building at noon. And have a great time and get back to work.